Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, honorable senators, for inviting me and the Ottawa Forum on Israel-Palestine to share a few thoughts with you on your important work on anti-Semitism in Canada and how to oppose it. My organization, of course, is aware of and concerned by some recent, well-publicized attacks, anti-Semitic attacks on Jewish schools or desecration of synagogues in Canada. These are appalling acts and should be thoroughly investigated by police, and appropriate legal action should be taken against those who have perpetrated them. Senators, remember that it was not too long ago that Canada was in a situation where anti-Semitism was culturally accepted. It was widely practiced and even enforced administratively by Canada. I'm thinking, for example, of the appalling incident of the ship, the St. Louis, that was turned away, and Jewish people trying to escape the Holocaust and were eventually sent back to a terrible death, or things like Canada's immigration policy, which was documented by Harold Troper and Irving Abella as none is too many, trying to prevent Jews from coming to Canada. As recently as the 40s and 50s, Jews were not allowed to join private clubs like the Rideau Club in Ottawa, golf courses, and so on. Jewish students were limited in their access to Canadian universities. Jewish doctors had trouble being affiliated with hospitals, and so on and so forth. These were appalling circumstances, which was characteristic of Canada in those times. My purpose in citing those few examples was to remind senators how widespread anti-Semitism was in Canada. However, in one generation, from about 1950 to 1980, all that radically changed. From being an accepted cultural practice, anti-Semitism became culturally unacceptable and even legally punished. The iconic image of Jews evolved from the fast-talking Duddy Kravitz to the urbane citizen like Louis Rasminsky, who became the governor of the Bank of Canada. And so after years of discrimination and exclusion from Canadian society, Canadian Jews began to make contributions in every aspect of Canadian life, in academia, in politics, in arts, culture, and in medicine. And statistics show that today, those Jews are the minority group in Canada that has the highest achievement, academic achievement, and the highest income in Canada. So they have become generous philanthropists and thoroughly integrated into Canadian society. But Canadian society does not exist in a vacuum, in a global vacuum. Canadians are increasingly aware of and critical of the actions of Israel, which defines itself as a Jewish state. Opinion polls in Israel show that Israeli society is now overwhelmingly opposed to the idea of any kind of Palestinian state. And the government of Israel has demonstrated that it is willing to use extreme violence to expel or even exterminate any Palestinians who resist that domination. Canadians who have repeatedly been told that Israel is a Western-style democracy, a peaceful democracy hoping for a two-state solution, now find this evolution of Israel very disturbing. And they are repelled by Israel's actions in the Gaza and in the West Bank, which it claims to carry out in the name of Jews around the world. A recent poll by Angus Reid found that 2/3 of Canadians find that what Israel is doing in Gaza is morally outrageous. And the majority of Canadians actually define what Israel is doing as genocide. Canadians also see that the most prominent Canadian Jewish organizations attempt to reframe opposition in Canada to Israel's actions as anti-Semitism. Now, not all Canadian Jews support Israel's genocide in Gaza or its ethnic cleansing of the West Bank. Organizations like the Independent Jewish Voices Canada have already been invited to speak to the senators and share their view. Other organizations like the Canadian Friends of Peace Now, which is a liberal Zionist organization, has also been very aggressive in criticizing the ethnic cleansing of the West Bank and some of Israel's operations in Gaza. But the fact that the dominant voices in Jewish voices in Canada, organizations like CJA or B'nai B'rith, that they diminish or deny or justify Israel's crimes in the name of Jews is appalling to many Canadians. And the fact that these organizations would try to suppress those who criticize Israel and label them as being anti-Semitic, deliberately confusing anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, also annoys many Canadians. I have no doubt that all of this contributes to a rising frustration and some acts or statements which Israel defenders can label as anti-Semitism, but which is in fact motivated by an opposition to the ideology and practice of Zionism. OFIP would like to offer to our senators 3 specific actions that could be taken by different actors to remedy this issue. The first is that the government of Canada should reverse its promotion of the International Holocaust Remembrance Association definition of anti-Semitism, the IRA definition, because it actively and consciously confuses anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. Secondly, the government of Canada should make clear that supporting Zionism or opposing it are equally protected by free speech in Canada. And thirdly, the Senate of Canada should open a discussion about the risks to Canada of complicity in the genocide by refraining to address the issue square on. The Senate could play a positive role by investigating and considering the findings of the International Court of Justice and a wide variety of human rights organizations and legal experts. The honorable senators should have the courage to tackle head-on one of the most defining political and moral issues of the 21st century. In conclusion, senators, the Ottawa Forum on Israel-Palestine is confident that the fear of a widespread rise in anti-Semitism is greatly exaggerated by deliberately promoted confusion between anti-Semitism and anti-Semitism and Judaism, anti-Semitism and Zionism. The overwhelming majority of Canadians is neither anti-Semitic, nor opposed to Judaism, nor hostile to Jews. But they are appalled by Israel's horrific actions in Gaza and disappointed by anyone, Jewish or not, who tries to defend them. Thank you very much for your time.